If you knew what your true yes was and what your true no was in all areas of your life, would you be able to choose faster and easier? What futures would those choices create? Everyone is capable of connecting to their bodies in a way to have more exuberant and joyful living now and in the future. Now, here is your host of Choosing a Different Future with Siris.
Hi, everyone. This is Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today's show topic is geeking out on pleasure and intimacy-based movies with my special guest host, Milica Jelenic. And I'm super, super excited for us to get into this. It's going to be awesome. If you're new to our show, this show is all about talking about different possibilities and resources and events and all these things where you can actually feel more empowered to create and choose a different future that's going to be beyond anything that's been ever expected or projected at you, at least the ones that don't work for you. And so I am coming from this from my background as a life coach, a family and child coach, body and relationship invitationalist, and also as someone who is very much into communication with my speech and language pathology practice, looking at how we can use energetic modalities to empower our bodies to have exuberant living. Yum, yum, yum. And today's topic is going to be something really, really interesting, really on that same vein. Welcome, Milica, to our show. I'm so glad for you to be on my show after being on your show.
Thanks for having me on, Siris. And I could listen to you say your name like all day long because it's so sexy. So, just randomly just like pop it up there. I think it's really cool.
Thank you. Well, my parents are very sexy and they wanted it to flow. My dad's a composer and he was like, let's have this flow like a melody. So I think it worked.
That's amazing. That is like, I wonder if he actually looked up like calculated something on that, because it does. It flows very melodically. It's very cool.
Thank you. And I want to introduce you properly. So those of our listeners who don't already know of you, even though they absolutely should, Milica is the host of The Pleasure Zone. I was honored to be on her show back in April when we were geeking out about pleasure and intimacy-based books. So definitely check out that episode. And she has a BA and works in the holistic health field. She is also a mitzvah technique teacher, sex and intimacy coach, and radio and TV podcast host, as we mentioned, and has facilitated greater ease and health in bodies for over 20 years. You can check out her website, milicajelenic.com. It's all on our episode notes. And after we get a bit of a chat, she's going to share some of the things that she has offered for our listeners and for anyone who visits her website and would like to get to know her further. But today in this episode, we're going to geek out on movies. It's one of my favorite things. And I think that everyone should really make sure they have a place to jot down some of our recommendations, because I think there's going to be some classic. Lisa and I have a very different approach to learning about and gathering information, yet it's very complementary. And I think we definitely tapped into that and played with that really well when we were geeking out about books. I mean, one of the things I'm curious about, Milica, is you're a really avid reader. You are listening to audiobooks all the time. You're reading all the time. You love research and like digging in, like, So like, what's your relationship with movies, since you definitely seem to lean more toward the books?
Yeah, for the educational piece, I do lean more towards the books. Not because I don't love movies, it's because I live in a house with one TV and a 15-year-old. So I get to watch my documentaries when nobody else is at home, right? Because and sometimes I can invite my partner into like, hey, want to watch this? And sometimes I'll get a yes, and sometimes I'll just get an eye roll of, you and your sex documentaries, really? So for me, I like getting the information from both. I am an audio learner, so if I hear it, I'm going to remember it, and if I hear it on TV, the chances I'm going to remember it. So I like to look at all kinds of varieties. Actually, much more so in movies. I like to look at varieties, movies and documentaries, more so than with probably with the books. With the books, I'm pretty directed at all things that are research based, written by doctors, sat there, in some place for 16 years doing their research. And I'm like, I will glean all your information and all your studies because you just summarized 16 years of your life in a book. How convenient for me for you to do that. So because apparently they wrote them all for me, didn't you know? So it's so I do love I love some good research, and like anecdotal stories that go in with the research are great too, just to make them more relatable. I think with documentaries, what I like to see are those real life stories of how some of these techniques maybe that I learned in some of these books, how they've been applied and how people are using them. And sometimes I see that in documentaries, and sometimes I see totally fresh new ideas, and I love all of it. So yeah, I think I have more variety when it comes to documentaries and movies than I do with my reading. What about you? What is your variety like? You're pretty variety based even in your reading too.
Yeah, I think there's not really any area of my life that I'm not like, let's have it all. Let's just mix it up. Like I like just having all these different things all over the place. And as I'm listening to you, one of the things that some people don't realize as you're talking, or they might not get until they explore your episode, is even though you love research and everything, it's not dry. You have a whimsy with it. A lot of the recommendations that you made that I absolutely loved. My last one that you recommended that I loved was The Curious History of Sex. I was worried it was going to be super dry, and I tore through that sucker. I was like, this is amazing. I was laughing. I had my mouth like at so many parts that I was reading it and listening to it. It was so much fun. So don't let her fool you when she's talking about research, y'all. It's really also stuff that is very interesting and engaging. But yeah, my relationship with movies is they actually kind of piggyback off of books a lot. There's a lot of overlap. Like I love reading a book and then giving it a pause and having a bit of moment because I can't do the movie right afterwards. And if I find there's a movie adaptation, I would love to see how they do it. And more, they're doing better with book adaptations. I'm very pleased. It's not always the case. So I'm actually going to mention for some of the movies I love, if I actually liked the book more or the movie more and things like that, just kind of continue our little flirtation with some of the books that we love. But for me, I love all different kinds. And I come from a very hedonistic place when I ingest anything. So if it doesn't make me smile, if it doesn't lean in, if there's not a seductive quality, be it book, movie, TV show, I'm not about it. I'm like, like, is it like we were talking about, like activating our groins and like flowing more energy to like all of the parts of our bodies, even before we started talking today. And I was like, yeah, it needs to wake some stuff up. Otherwise, I'm like, I could use my time in another way.
For sure, right? Anything that gets your groin activated. I think it's not just for the feeling sexual, feeling sexy, getting yourself to feel confident in that. It also is that energetic of like, we're looking at like the base chakras and we're like inviting them to open up. And that's just like the gateway to opening all of you up. So to me, when you can open that, it's amazing. When I work with people, I was working with a lady yesterday. This is so off topic, but on topic.
Yeah.
And I'm actually like I'm doing a class right now about conscious language. I'm learning it. So I was using it with a client of mine, and we were kind of going through like a process. And she did this thing where we were going through her body and looking at different parts of her body. And then she skipped from her hips. She went, and I love my leg. Actually, it was, I love my legs. And then she went, and I love my shoulders. And I was like, what about the rest of your torso? And she was like, I don't like talking about my torso. I'm like, then I'm going to go right in there and we're going to talk. Tell me all about your pussy. Like, I want to know what you're related. And she's like, I'm like, okay, well, darling, we need to talk about that because if it mortifies you, there's something there. And so when we open those things up, there can be such a change. And whether we do it in facilitation, like if somebody hires one of us to do that, to facilitate that, or if you do it while you're watching a show and something wakes up in you and you're like, whoa, I just noticed that I've been avoiding that forever. Or you're, reading a book or listening to a book and you go, oh, there's insight, and it wakes you up. That's, for me, that's like the best. I love having my body wake up. Especially like being sapiosexual, anything brainy is so sexy to me. So I love research. It's kind of like porn for me. I love research.
Well, and I think I have a bit of that as well. I often say, and I actually just said it this morning to my partner, I was like, yep, I get naked for brains and laughs, and you just made me think of stuff. And then I was laughing to the point of tears this morning, and I was like, oh, we don't have time before this podcast. Let's shelve it. So I totally hear you on that one. And one of the things I love about what you said is, in addition to if it mortifies you, let's talk about it. Let's lean into it. The other piece is, what if whatever you can't talk about, that you haven't been willing to talk about yet, if we can't talk about it, we can't change it. If we can't talk about it, we can't learn more about it, have what we'd really truly desire about it. So I agree with you on this. I think that these are different things for us to keep in mind as we are talking about some of our recommendations for books and for movies and for anything else we geek out about. And so I'm curious, is there any like first movies that really were eye-opening for you, that were part of your beginning of your journey, sexually, intimacy wise, pleasure wise?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so probably the first movie, I like looking back and thinking about the first movies or shows, it would probably have been a show, really, but I think the first ones that opened me up sexually, and I can't remember the name of this, it was a documentary that I watched probably in the 90s. And it was all about women's sexuality, and they were opening up it was all spiritual work, and they were following this group of women who were doing comparisons on breast sizes. And the one that woke me up the most of it in this particular documentary, and whoever has watched it out there, and if they remember the name of it, please let me know, because I have no idea. It was like on public television, which blew my mind. It was like because at the time I only had like 3 channels for my TV, and one of them was a public broadcasting channel. And in it, at the end of this entire series, a group of women get in a circle and masturbate in front of each other. And I was like, what? I've heard of like men doing the circle jerk, but I've never heard of this. And that, like, it blew my brain open. And I was like,
how old were you when you watched this?
I would have been about in my 20s, early 20s. I'm like 48. So yeah.
Okay. So there was that's later than I would have thought. I was at first like a bit concerned. I was like, were you like 10 or are you 5? Like, and you found this on public TV?
Awesome.
Okay. For me,
I don't remember.
It's really interesting. Like, so I started everything really early. I actually am really grateful for that, in the sense of it wasn't in an inappropriate way, but because my parents talked about bodies, and not just anatomy, but like pleasure, and not masturbation, but just like, yeah, this is our bodies and you have autonomy and you get to choose who touches it or not. They told us that at a very early age, and they told us what to do if anybody was trying to touch our bodies that we didn't like or that we didn't know, and how to talk to them about it and report it. They were very much proactive in front of it. And I think I was 12, and it was my first boyfriend, Jose Martinez. Hi, Jose, if you're out there. Hello. I think of you fondly. I remember that my sister and my brother were watching The Little Mermaid, the Disney's Little Mermaid, the animated one. And I was responsible for looking out for them, but I had my boyfriend here, and we wanted to make out, and we wanted to kiss, and we were doing all this stuff, and we had the lights off. And I remember doing dry humping for Taj behind my brother and sister while they watched The Little Mermaid. And we'd watch it like over 20 times together. I still watch it. I love it. I love everything mermaid and sea related. But that planted the seed of like, this risque, like doing stuff and almost being caught. Like my mom might come down the stairs because she was upstairs. She wasn't like gone. She could have come downstairs like at any moment, and planted the seeds of like my kink journey and me wanting to like take a little bit of risk and like push that envelope a little bit. So The Little Mermaid, I sing it out and I love the music, but it also has this like sexual association in my world that is very long. We've had a long journey together.
I think that's hilarious. Okay, so I would never even think of going there. So I love that you bring that up. After you say that,
our first break though. I know you're about to say something really cool.
I have a different idea. I'll bring it up after.
Okay. It's time for our first break, y'all, of this show. You're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris on the Inspired Choices Network. And when we return, we will continue to discuss Geek Out, pleasure and intimacy movies with my guest host, Milica Jelenic. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com. or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is Geek Out, pleasure and intimacy-based movies with my guest host, Milica Jelenic. And our show, I want you to know, our show is brought to you by Activated Liquid Collagen from LifeVantage. Liquid collagen is a different, better collagen supplement. Get real results that you can see and feel. Check out the Activated Liquid Collagen and LifeVantage's other natural plant-based products to address anti-aging, gut health, energy, and more by going to www.sirisrivas.lifevantage.com. And our show is also brought to you by The Elements of Living, the ingredients to creating empowered, authentic, and joyful living with your body. By familiarizing yourself with the elements of living, or EOLs, you can identify where you already have the ingredients to create a phenomenal life that's worth living to you. Awaken the slumbering elements essential for you to thrive, and stop anywhere that you are being misled by irrelevant and erroneous information. For our listeners, you can retrieve the introductory quick book on the elements of living for free, waiving the current cost of the book by emailing us at empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com with the subject line elements. And for more information on the elements of living, visit empoweringlightlanguage.com/elements of living. So before we went on break, we were discussing some of our early movie experiences and how it contributed to our sexual and pleasure journeys.
Okay, so then if we're really getting weird on this, because I loved your Little Mermaid answer, it would have been a show in Canada called Mr. Dress Up, who I absolutely had a crush on at the age of 5. And I could not miss a day of watching Mr. Dress Up without, it was devastating to not see him. He was a crafter and he wore costumes and there were puppets. Like, he was probably the first person I was in love with. Aww. So yes, that was probably, and then like then I'm thinking too, I'm like, well, then there was like all this stuff in the 90s. There were some really great movies like Basic Instinct. I remember watching that with a friend of mine, and we didn't really know what it was about.
Like,
he had a girlfriend,
Sharon
I had a
Stone
boyfriend.
Or Kim Basinger in
Yeah,
that?
Sharon Stone. It's the
I
one
have a
where,
Sharon
the
Stone
leg
one.
opening. Yeah.
Yes.
Remember that one? Yeah. So he had a girlfriend, I had a boyfriend, and we got so uncomfortable watching it. We were like, what do we do with this? Like, the energy's rising and we're trying to be good people, right? So whatever that means. So yeah, I remember just going, this is the most awkward moment I've ever had with this person ever. So yes, that was memorable because it was so awkward, and I will not call out his name because he is married. And chances are I don't even think he remembers it. I think it was more in my brain because he's a dude, and he probably then, after seeing that movie, watched it with like 20 other people just to see what it did to them. So
you're like, wait for it.
That's right.
With Sharon Stone, that was another one for me. So I don't know if anybody remembers the movie Sliver. And it was with one of the Baldwin brothers. It wasn't Steven, it wasn't Alec. What's the other one's name? Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, there's so many Baldwins. Yeah. And so it was the most attractive Baldwin, in my opinion. I mean, Alec was very attractive at first, and then he kind of like went downhill, but this one still continues to be very attractive. William Baldwin, Billy Baldwin, that's his name.
William. Oh, good call.
And and he was all about, there's voyeurism in there. There was playing in elevators. There was all these scenes of like him dominating her and like being like this mentor role. There was stuff about him arousing her in the middle of a restaurant and her not being able to say anything or do anything. I was like, seeds planted.
Yes. It became your life. That's so
it was
awesome.
like, this is my list, and I've been crossing it off ever since. That's the other thing. It's like, it inspires. It's like, ooh, would that be fun? Let's see. Let's find out. Some of it did not turn out great. And some of it, I was like, that could be better. Let's try it again in a different way.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's a really great way to also figure out new ideas, right? Like if you're getting like a bit stale in your relationship, go watch some of these movies and see what ideas come up, because you're probably going to find that, collectively people can be way more creative than if you're just trying to come up with ideas on your own. So looking at ideas that already exist can be really helpful. That's partly why I love research too, just ideas.
Well, and I love all of that with the research. I definitely had the curious history of sex playing in my household. So it generated conversation. And so for both, it could be a way for you to start a conversation that maybe you're not sure how to do it, but the content can provide that first or second step for you to like facilitate that. And then you can take it from there. And it may be that their eyes bug out. It may be that their body leans in. It may be that they go, oh, and you go, oh. And then they go, like, oh, at least it starts it off for you. And I think that if you don't have a coach, if you don't have somebody else that's there in that moment to open up the door for you, it's nice to have these other media help you out and have your back.
Absolutely. Always look for something to have your back.
Yes, yeah. So with a lot of the ones, like I'd love for some people to know about some of the documentaries that you love. I mean, there's been a lot that you recommended to me, and I'm still getting through them. Are there some in particular that have really resonated and supported your journey?
Oh, let's talk about one that we both love. Okay. Let's talk about Rocco, because we both love Rocco.
Well, yes. So Rocco. And it's so funny you brought him up because I'd forgotten the documentary, but Rocco was one of my favorite porn stars for the longest. Like when he was still active, I was watching him. And so when I found out about the documentary, I was actually quite hesitant to watch it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Because I was like, I don't want you to ruin this for me.
That's funny.
It was a little like, because documentaries have a way of doing that. They give you the good, the bad, the ugly, the awesome, and I was like, can I just keep this as like a positive association? Yeah. There was a lot. There was a mix. What did you think of it?
So I didn't know his work. So I didn't have that going in. What I thought the filming was amazing. The beginning of that documentary, there's some parts you could just pause and stare at forever. Let's face it. Like, there's a shower scene that could go on for the rest of my life, and I'd be quite fine with it.
Yeah. You can see why I enjoy his work.
Yeah, and exactly. So I think what it did for me was actually it gave a scene behind pornography that we don't often see. Like, often in a lot of the documentaries around pornography, there's a lot of like icky to say. Like, it can feel awkward and icky. Like, I think it's a Girls Most Wanted or Hot Girls Wanted or something. It's not actually that kind.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of a hard one to watch. But in the one with Rocco, you can see like his love of his work, and then you can see he has absolute admiration for the people he's working with. Like, he cares about them, right? Or at least that's what they're showing us. And I was like, that is lovely that he actually cares that they're happy. Like, it's not just a job for him. And I think that's so cool. And I love that they show his wife, and his wife's super supportive of his work, and she's like cheering him on, right? Like, that's just great stuff.
Yeah, I found that very validating, because that's part of what I loved about him. It wasn't the mechanics, it wasn't the settings, it wasn't his partners or the specific positions or anything. It was, as someone that taps into energies and bodies, it came through as like, he's really genuinely enjoying himself. I can't really watch porn anymore with anyone that I can perceive that it is the mechanics and the job. Like, I can pick up on that really quickly. And so for him, it was really nice to be like, oh no, he's having so much fun, and he wants the people around him to be having so much fun. And this is not just this, he would do this even if he wasn't getting paid. Like, you could just see that aspect to it. And so when I saw the documentary, I was like, oh, thank God. Okay. Okay. I wasn't, because I was like, please don't tell me that what I was picking up on was wrong. I think I was actually concerned that my perception skills was going to be called into question, and I was going to have to question that piece that I had developed and trained for so long. And I was like, okay, no, I'm so good.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I could see that would do that for sure. I haven't even checked to see if there is a book on it, like if they did a book after the documentary. Maybe he's got a biography or an autobiography. I haven't checked that, but that just made me think about doing that.
The book was before. I feel like there was a book. I can see the cover of something. It might not have been written by him. It might have been somebody else doing like an expose, or like writing about him in biographical form. But yeah, something for us to look at. Yeah, now you got me peaked. I'm gonna write that down for myself.
That's kind of fun. There's in our conversations we've had some, I mean, if you guys actually watched us behind the scenes in our conversations, they're quite titillating. That's the word I'm going to use.
I would agree with that.
So yeah, even like conversations about what we want to talk about can go on forever. So we had a really fun conversation too about one of our other favorites, the 5 à 7. Like, how great is that movie? But I know we have to go to a break soon, but that's such a great movie.
Well, and that'll get into, let's maybe talk about everything related to poly and open and different alternative relationship dynamics in this next section after this upcoming break, because that's part of what they touch upon in there, and so much more in that movie. And it was one of the things that got us geeked out about doing a series of geeking out about different things, because we're like, oh, we share that. I wonder what else we share. So we'll definitely talk about that one. Oh my gosh. So let's go ahead and take our break now. It is time for our next break, y'all, and time for me to drink some more water. So you're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, with myself, Siris, on the Inspired Choices Network. And when we return, we will continue to discuss Geek Out, Pleasure and Intimacy Movies with my guest host, Milica Jelenic. We will be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is Geek Out, pleasure and intimacy movies with my guest host, Milica Jelenic. And I want to make sure that if you haven't already connected with us on our live forum, in our live chat room, go ahead and go to our Inspired Choices Network app, the ICN app, or you can go to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, click on chat room, and go ahead and put whatever name you'd like, and we can send us messages and comments while we are talking today, including any comments if you know about some of the movies that we've mentioned and you have some feedback on us. If you have some other recommendations, we'd love to give you a shout out and incorporate that into our discussion. And just so you know, our show is brought to you by Activated Liquid Collagen from LifeVantage. You can go ahead and find out more information about LifeVantage's natural plant-based products to address anti-aging, gut health, energy, and more by going to sirisrivas.lifevantage.com. And our episode is also brought to you by Elements of Living, and you can find out more information about that at www.empoweringlightlanguage.com/elementsofliving. And our guest host, Milica, has a wonderful offer that she wants to mention about that's on her Pleasure Zone website as well, and on her podcast, and on her website, the milicajelenic.com. Milica, go ahead and talk to our listeners about that.
Hi, everybody. So what I have as an offer is I have a little thing called the Do's, Don'ts, and Maybes list, which is free for you. It's a little too vanilla for Siris. I just have to say, it probably just is. But for those of you who are looking to get just on the edge of vanilla and stepping into a little kink in your life, it can invite you into that. It has lots of ideas and lots of locations. And I'm a big fan of slap those together and have some fun and make a game of it, right? Like you could have your all kinds of ideas. So I have an ideas list that comes with the do's, don'ts, maybes list. And the do's, don'ts, maybes list is actually a thing you can use with your partner to write the things down that you really want to do, the things you really don't want to do, and the things you're willing to negotiate. And sometimes if you don't have the language or you're shy about conversation about it, it can be a door opener so that you can go, I have this list. Would you like to do the list too? And then you can actually see what some of the things are. You might find that you have a lot in common of things you want to do or things you don't want to do. And there might be a lot of curiosity to things that you become open to. So it's a really fun list. I think it's great for whether you are new in a relationship, whether you're old in a relationship. If you're in a poly relationship, just download 10 of them and see what comes out. Have fun with the whole list.
Well, and I think the other thing that is really nice, like, yes, it's a great resource for beginning, but there's a lot of people listening that are also coaches themselves, or are therapists, or other medical professionals, and you can have this list and provide it to your clients and to your patients. So even if you know that about yourself and you're already having those conversations with ease, I think it's still a really good resource for others and to facilitate those conversations and empower others with a way to have a platform for these really, really important discussions. Like, if you're not really having the intimacy and pleasure that you'd like, it's really hard to feel like it's worthwhile to be on this planet. Like, that's part of it. Like, just talking about this gives me more energy, makes me like, yes, this is why I'm here on this planet. Like, it's a good reminder of like, oh, I signed up for this. I signed up for pleasure. I didn't sign up for all the stress and the drama and all of that. Like, let's include more pleasure, please. And with that in mind, let's talk about some hedonism, some open and poly stuff. Let's talk about 5 à 7. So do you want to give kind of like a summary of the movie?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to let you guys know where I found this movie. Originally, my mom was part of this group called the Spiritual Cinema Circle. And Spiritual Cinema Circle is no longer Spiritual Cinema Circle. I think it turned into Gaiam TV. And every month you would get a DVD with videos. And so at the time we were still getting DVDs delivered to my mom's house. And on one of those was the 5 à 7, which is, so the idea, if you don't speak French, is the 5 to 7. And what this is based around is the idea that in France, between the hours of 5 and 7, it is a free-for-all. You can have your lovers, and it's acceptable and it's open, and in fact it's quite encouraged. Now the funny thing is I brought this up to some French people and they're like, what? I'm like, maybe you don't know your culture that much, but there is an unspoken agreement that the 5 à 7 is very acceptable. So in this movie, it shows this woman who is very, what I remember of it, because I watched it years ago, was that she was very interested in this younger guy, and she invites him back to this place. They had like an apartment that they went to. And then all of a sudden he's invited to dinner with the family, not only the family, with the husband's lover. And he was like, what's going on here? He was this was like a brand new and interestingly strange world to him. So I think, so for one thing, I was like, there was a lack of conversation had here. However, I think because culturally for the woman, she was just like, this is what we do. She didn't know there was a conversation needed, right? But when you're inviting somebody into something that for you is just so, this is how I am, maybe consider that's not true for everyone. But what did you love about that movie too?
I think the other piece is the multicultural piece. So she's from France and from Parisian in particular, and then he's American, and they meet in New York, and all this is happening in New York. And so she's bringing her cultural, traditions and information and her awareness and how her family works to this youngster, to this young man. And he's a super talented actor. He played the engineer in Star Trek and all the Star Trek reboots, and has since died. So he died maybe a year or two after this movie was made. And I actually saw it on Netflix. I found it on Netflix. It's now, I just checked. It's no longer on Netflix right now, unfortunately. It kind of comes on in and out, but that cultural piece, because there are conversations about them having an open relationship and what her and her husband have agreed upon, and what their definitions of cheating is different than other relationships' definitions of cheating. And what you said, I love, it's like never to assume. Don't assume when you're starting any type of relationship dynamic that what you're thinking of, what you would expect, what is going to work for you is going to work for your partner or your potential partners. And I loved learning about French culture through the lens of the poly world. I usually learned it the other way around. I would learn about French culture first, and then I was like, what kind of relationship y'all doing? What is going on here? So to go from the other way, it was really cool. And I have a lot of francophone friends, and there are many that knew about the movie, but they said that it's actually more common and more transparent and open in the cities and not so much in the countryside, which is similar to the US, right? There's a lot of more kink clubs and play spaces in the bigger cities than there are in like rural towns. That's more like house
Although,
parties or things like
I
that.
gotta tell you, Siris, I live in a really rural area and we have a whole whack load of swingers.
But do they
It
have
is like
official venues?
they actually do. So you gotta
Oh,
imagine there are fields and
leaning
barns, and
in.
there is like this acknowledgement that there are signs that people have on their entryways to their homes, so you know whether this is safe or not. And there's a town south of me that is like, it's like a 15-minute drive, and it is like secretly, unsecretly known as the swinger zone. And
Ah.
you just got to know the symbol to look for. And if the door is open, you're good to go.
Do they use pineapples? Like here is pineapples.
I think it's more like something that's like I think it actually is not, it's more like a horseshoe or something, but it makes you think like you could accidentally, because when I heard it, I was like, you could accidentally do that if you had a ranch and not even know what you're doing.
Well, and I found out about this, and there's a really beautiful hotel in Savannah, in downtown Savannah, and I know that they're not encouraging swinging, but there's a lot of golden pineapples. It's very opulent decor. And I was like, do they realize the overlap here? Like, you know, like,
no. That's funny.
yeah, pineapples, and our producers saying that pineapples are a symbol of hospitality. So it can be a little confusing. So let's not assume. And hospitality organizations use them all over the place. There you go. Tricky. But yes, definitely check out 5 to 7.
Swinging is a really sweet form of hospitality. You're not only are you welcome in my home, you're welcome in my holes. Like, that's really sweet, right?
And you're welcome to my partner's holes.
Right.
With their consent. Yes, consent.
That's right.
You know, another really great movie that, because I love history, and that's something that we share. And I really love the movie Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. It overlaps all these amazing things I love. I love history. I love comics. I love Wonder Woman. I love Polly, and it was all in one movie. I think it's on Hulu, and it's about the person who originally came up with the concept of Wonder Woman and the comics, and how originally there was a lot of BDSM like themes in it, and they had to like shift it over time.
Oh. Yeah. That makes total sense. When you look at Wonder Woman's outfit and her like whip, like she had a whip, right? And like,
yep, she had
her
a whip.
lasso, right?
Lasso of truth.
But, yeah, right. And she, and just the symbolism, even that she rides in a plane, right? Like, really, like the shapes, like it makes total sense. And she lives. Is she not originally from like an island of all women?
Yes.
Like, right? Like she's from Lesbos, essentially.
Yeah.
Great.
So there's a lot there. And then it so happens that the man who was the first like cartoonist and everything, he was going through his own financial professional journey. He was having conversations with his wife. He met this other woman, and they had a polyfidelity dynamic where they were all dating and being together, and how that played into their relationship, and how a lot of the comics were banned because of these connotations initially, and then how it evolved over time. Fascinating. And it's all done in this like historical fiction type of movie. It's really, really cool. I can't recommend it enough. I would watch it again like in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. I love it.
Now, do you have any of your movies that you would recommend that talk about open and poly or more alternative dynamics?
Yeah, so alternative dynamics, I think there was one, and it was French translated to English, and it was called it was also on Netflix for quite a while, and it was now I can't remember the word for it. Somebody can help me on this one. It's the word for when somebody is, it's called nymphomania. Okay. And so the woman, the character's a French woman. And I think what for her, it was all about self-discovery. And she learned a lot about herself, but she also was experiencing, from what I was observing, some forms of like mental health issues. And she was trying to resolve them through her nymphomania. I mean, they would say that nymphomania itself is a mental health issue, but it could also be a self-discovery experience, depending on how you view it, right? To me, that one was a great one, mostly because at the time I was doing a lot of questioning of what I wanted my body to look like. And I watched this and I was like, that's what I want my body to look like. And I said it to my husband, and he's like, what are you talking about? You actually have that body. You have those boobs and that butt. So that movie stuck in my mind because of that particular, that incident, but also because you don't often see it. I think they were trying to create the character as a more empowered character, rather than, you could see that she was struggling, but you could see also that she's trying to find a way to be empowered with her nymphomania. And I thought that was kind of cool. So she was taking it to more of a freedom of sexuality rather than a mental health issue.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's that toggle that we all have. I think a lot of people, when they talk to me and they're like, Siris, you're one of the only people I can talk to about this stuff, because like I don't, like, there's so much stigma, there's so much blocks in a lot of people's worlds. I don't want to trigger them. It's a kind of a minefield. But then on top of that, they're worried that they're going to go too far. Like there's this fear of, like, if I really start dipping my toe in the water, will I fall in and drown my partner? Will my relationship survive this? And especially when it's talking about open and poly, it's like, well, what if they cheat on me, or what if they leave me? They already go to the worst case scenarios. Like there's a lot between that first step, that first toe dip, and drowning and all of that over there. And I think I actually really enjoyed that documentary and that movie as well. I mean, it's I don't know is it actually a documentary? I think it's just like a exploration.
I think it's more like
right?
I think it's more like a movie, but they filmed it as kind of like as if it was supposed to be a documentary, but it wasn't really a documentary.
Yeah, that's how I took it too. And part of what I loved is that conversation of mental health and kink and sexual exploration, because I really, part of what I loved about the Chicago kink scene and meeting so many amazing people in it is they were very upfront, so many of them, not everyone, but a lot, where they were talking about how they actually used kink to be a catalyst for their healing, and how without it, they would feel groundless. They would have a harder time with whatever they were dealing with. I can't tell you how many teachers and doctors that are in high pressure professions, they would use that to release some of that pressure and be able to come back to their students, to their patients, to whoever they were gifting to, and be like, okay, I'm here, I'm present, because this is a way of my self-care. And to have those conversations were so powerful. And I think that when you see examples of that in nymphomania, it can feel a little bit more blurred. But that's why I really encourage people to go to places where it's a judgment-free space, and have those conversations, and in a respectful way, and not just be like, here, let's talk, like, use your social cues, your social skills. But it's really helpful to talk to other people that are exploring and asking questions and wondering if there's some other things that they can do to stay sane, because your sanity is priceless. And so please do that, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, like you're not breaking any laws, really make sure your sanity and your emotional and mental health is paramount. Yes. And this is talking about nymphomaniac. Yeah. But there's so many other ones we can talk about with that. I loved it as well when the movie Kinsey, like talking about, like that with Liam Neeson, who, I mean, just hotness. He can get it any day. Like to this day, I don't care how old he is. I love Liam Neeson. And that talks about the researcher. I think his first name is Alfred, right? Alfred Kinsey.
Yeah, Alfred Kinsey. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was paramount in a lot of what we now are looking into and exploring about orgasms, about relationships, about the physiology of what happens in our bodies during sex, before sex, after, all of that. And he interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people and had a whole team. And then you get to actually
observed too.
Yes, he observed. very closely. And then he got to hear in that movie and watching that movie how that played out in his personal life, how it had affected his relationship with his wife. They were having open relationships. They were having multiple loving relationships for decades. And that intersectionality and how that overlaps is just fascinating. And then you get to learn some tips and facts about bodies that you might not know about otherwise.
For sure. Kinsey also was the first researcher who brought the idea of a scale of sexuality to the forefront, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just, and we're going to use the clinical terms because he was using it from a clinical perspective of homosexuality to heterosexuality, mm-hmm. and the scale in between that, like, it's not one or the other, right? So mm-hmm. I think that having that out in the open for people to be able to then go, oh, I don't have to be strictly identifying, I can be in this scale, probably created so much freedom for people that we don't even understand yet to this day. So yeah, mm-hmm. big fan of Kinsey, even though he was a little bit weird, but a big fan.
Yeah, there is some problematic stuff in there. There's a lot of control in his relationship and in his research that they explore in there. I like that they didn't avoid it. It really adds a beautiful nuance and complexity to the plot of the movie and to everything else you're learning about that is really, really interesting. And it's funny because I was thinking about Kinsey, and then I was wondering about if it was still really used, that scale, because they have so many different ways of how they talk about it now. And then I was watching the movie Bros on Amazon. I think it's only on Amazon. And can you tell I love movies? I have all the platforms. I'm like, which platform is it on? I need to have it. And I just finished it. I'd been watching it in pieces because I really wanted to make sure I only watched it and I was really present and could really be there with the movie. And I'm so glad I did it that way. I just finished it last night fresh. I even made a post on my Facebook wall, and love it. I'm so happy about it for the LGBTQI, all the letter community that I am a part of as being pansexual, because it talks about it's a romantic comedy, but that throws out so many of the romantic comedy tropes, all these things that we usually would see in a romantic comedy. It just tosses it, puts it on its head, points it out, and was like, ha ha, you thought we're going here, we're going over here, all the time. And it's funny, like you laugh out loud. It's it almost was like a British humor, even though it's an American cast. So I love that.
I'm all about the British humor. Yeah, right? That's awesome.
And they brought up the scale because in the movie, one of the main characters is opening up the first LGBTQ museum and the history museum. Oh, cool. So, and it's like, and recognizing that their history is our history and not to avoid it. No matter if you don't consider yourself in this community in a direct way, like if you are heterosexual, their history is still your history. Just like if you're white, Black history is still part of your history, right? Like it's just really embracing that. And then you get to see this really whimsical, totally nonlinear romance unfold in this movie. And it's really powerful. There were moments where I cried and I was like, I would have loved to have had this movie as a teenager. Like I want all the teenagers
still watching it
to watch this movie and have this be like, oh, this is what's possible, as one of many, 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 many representations of our community. And they highlight that a lot. There are trans people, there are non-binary people, there are heterosexual allies. Like there are a lot of cameos from celebrities, especially at the end, that they go wink wink, we support you. And I'm like, yay, thank you.
That's awesome.
More of this.
So cool.
Whoever is a director and does film and TV, please have more of this in the world. Thank you.
There's all the backlash, right, of people going, I don't want to on TV, like to get so upset about it. It's like, guess what? We all exist. And I'm sorry if that bothers you. So, yeah. There's one
I don't
I think
say
is
sorry,
really
but the rest of that, yes.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not sorry either. I think it's just a habit. It's a Canadian habit of apology.
I have a lot of Canadian friends, and I was like, honey, say sorry to everybody else but me, not me. Like, be here. It's okay. And so my friend Amanda, you know who you are out there. You're one of them. And she's like, she doesn't really say sorry as much anymore now that she's been around me so many years.
No need to apologize for who you are. So I hope we brought you guys some shows that are going to be like movies and shows that'll entertain the socks off of you.
Oh, wow. Is this the end of the show?
Thank
oh my
you for
gosh, I think we
listening to
missed
the
our last
Choosing a
part.
Different Future show. Siris returns Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Mountain, and 7 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, keep choosing what will work for you and your body, your own unique way honoring what will work for you.